Hangout errors live. Okay. So that worked. Got 1 minute left. Can anybody check the YouTube account? Make sure it's broadcasting, I guess. Yes, who cares? Figure it out later. If anything, I'll redo it, and if I have to repost, then there'll be more to it then.
You didn't tell us anything about YouTube or GitHub. You just said this.
Great.
He gave us the right room, so.
Okay.
Little lag?
A lot of money.
That's probably because you're streaming on your phone.
It's to play it.
Okay, I'm going to get started. Hello, my name is Joey Richardson. I am a junior here at San Jose State. I'm a software engineer. Come on in, iOS workshop. Yeah. So here is the project that's on GitHub. There is my GitHub username. We're going to go ahead and try to clone everything in. So first things first, how many of you have downloaded Xcode already? So everybody's got Xcode? Okay. If you're not, you just search for it in there. You can download it from the App Store for free, and it will update and just install right over if you already have an Xcode or Xcode beta. So once we got that going, then usually how I do it is with a terminal, and just we can make a whole new project. But first we shall, wow, that is loud. First, we will create a whole new project just to show everybody at home how it's done. So there is something that's called the playground, the Xcode playground, and it's mainly for just messing around, playing with the language, creating variables and data. It does not actually make an app to my knowledge, so we're just going to jump right in. Let me fix the screen real quick because it is not happy. So I always do a single view application. There are other templates and you can jump right into a game. I think I saw my friend do that once, and it already brought up something with like a space shuttle spinning around that you can flick and it would move. It was pretty cool. There are others, such as you can even do just regular C applications, and you can look through the frameworks and libraries, and these are ones for the OS X. So if you do the desktop application, so we'll just do the single view application. So we give it a product name and actual workshop. If I do misspell something, I am sorry. I'm terrible at it. So I always put it into my Xcode workspace. Cannot see it. Great. Again. Awesome resolution. I can't click the button. No. I can't. Oh. Yeah. Terrible projector. So just create it. And here is where it gets into all of the, I guess, back-end parts of the project that usually people don't really see. Build identifier, that's for putting it onto the phone, what version. If you make a different storyboard, as you will see, it is where this entire file starts. And that's our first storyboard. So if you already have cloned the project and put it into a directory and open it, we can just open up the Swift workshop and it will bring up all this code that's already pre-made for us. And we'll be going through it and seeing certain aspects because I just wanted to show people at home how to start a project and where to start. And this is the storyboard. That's where all the buttons, view controllers, table view controllers all go. And you create other controller Swift files. That's where all the logic and all the code actually go. So here is a better example. Here's the workshop storyboard, which has everything for the current app that we're going to run. So if we zoom in a bit, the navigation controller is the one, so whenever you're using an app or on iOS, and if you like go through different views and you have that back button up there, this is what allows for that. So I always bring it in first and just, here, we'll do a controlled drag without breaking it, hopefully. So usually I would have all three of these menus open. They just open and close. And same with over here. Get that menu to close in case you want to work on a smaller screen and just need the real estate for the code. So if we zoom out a bit, I always find it easier to zoom out and let it snap back into this sort of zoomed out where you can't really see what's inside of each view controller, but you can drag out these. And this is where we can drag out a view controller, and this is where we can add new buttons, new labels, and other fun stuff. So first things first, whenever you do create a whole new view controller, you also want to create a corresponding Swift file. So since we created that new view controller, we go to File, New, File, and we'll do just the simple Cocoa Touch class. You can do a Swift file, but I don't believe you can connect it directly up to that storyboard nib file, as they're called. That is where I'll show you later. That's the data model course. That's where I put like kind of my global variables. But so you just do a Cocoa Touch class, and we'll give it a name. And here is where you want to match what you just dragged into the storyboard. So I dragged in a view controller. If we were to say, oh, it's a subclass of table view controller, we would not be able to hook that up properly. Right? Or we could, but it just looked weird. So what we can do instead is it will remember usually what you've done in the past. So you can also just type in UI view controller. And I usually always just do Swift, give it a name, say next. It will put it into the directory. And there it is, popped up. And it filled up some of the basic functionality of what each view controller needs. So like for inheritance, if we say we're a subclass of UI view controller, then we need certain methods, such as the view did load. That is the first method that is going to be called when each view controller is loaded from when you're running your app. Next, I believe this is just for the options at the bottom. I've never had to touch it. I just leave it there. So this is like our main function that we can use to call other functions and from custom functions that we make within the file. So if we go back, because this is the first thing I always do, you can double click and zoom in, and this is the storyboard nib file that we just created. And if you go here, a quick help inspector, identity inspector, attributes inspector, size inspector, and connections inspector. So the connections inspector shows you what connections of variables and other things that you've connected within your entire project or within this storyboard or within this view controller. So first thing, we go to the identity inspector. And right now it says class of UI view controller. So it's just basically UI view controller class. And usually when they are gray, it means they are not saved and haven't really been loaded into the project, as I found. So I always either save, or you can do Command-Shift-K, and you'll do a clean project. It saves everything, cleans the project. It's a quick way of doing a save all. So once I do that, I just do the drop-down list, and there's my test view controller. So now this view controller is a test view controller, and any connections that I want to put in here is I can modify the buttons, the labels, anything from this test view controller Swift file. So this is going to look disgusting. but I will show you how to create a connection between like a button or a label. We'll do both because there's a little trick to both. So here we see this bow tie, which is the to the assistance editor, and we bring it up and we just click that, and eventually you'll get two view controllers, or two views in a way. So I always, to connect my variables, I bring up the storyboard one, and then to the left of it, or to the right of it, we zoom out and highlight this. It will bring up the corresponding view controller that is connected to that storyboard item. Give me a little more room. And then sometimes we have to navigate ourselves as to where the location of the view controller is. And then here, now we have this nib file in the storyboard, and here's the corresponding view controller. So if we bring this menu back, smudge up the code, here we'll have view controller, navigation controller, table view controller, and it's on this tab within the far right menu. There's also a media library, so this kind of filters out all of these options here. And if you just scroll, you'll see labels, buttons, segmented controls, text views, just everything that you've seen in an app before, including visual. Oh, that's cool. With blur. Didn't know that was there. There's the map kit, GL kit, screen view. Thank you. Different gestures that you can say to do certain things with certain gestures. Then navigation items for like putting things up in the navigation bar. And that's about all for those. So we're just gonna drag in, and when you're zoomed out like this, if you try to like drag in a label, it'll bring it right back because it's basically not zoomed in far enough. So we'll just drag in on the label, and we'll say label, and drag in a button. And we'll just have it be button. So I'm going to get rid of this menu to bring up more real estate. Next, we just have a label and a button, and it won't do anything. So now we will do a control, and you hold it, and you drag it. You click and you drag. And make sure that you are on your label or your button. There have been too many times where I've actually done the entire view and dragged that over, and just was confusing for a while. So insert outlet or outlet collection. So for this label, you just let it go. It brings up outlet object for the test view controller, and you just give it a name. Make sure I spell that right. It is of type UI label. I've never actually seen what else there is. I always just give it a name and say connect. So now with our UI label, we have the connection to our code to this .nib file. And if we want to, we can say my label, we'll bring it up now. And it follows somewhat of Java's dot notation, so it can have certain things to it, such as text, and that will be able to change the text programmatically. You can set it, and there's you can do with UI text views and just pull the text from there. You can just by saying UI. I'll show you actually. So once we do that, then there's also the button one that you control drag, bring it over. Now for the button, if you wanted to do an action, so when you hit it to go to a new segue or to a new .nib file view controller, then you have to click here and say I want it to be an action instead. An outlet will act the same as a label. You'll be able to change the color, the text, the size, just whatever you want. So if we do an action instead, then we'll say, just give it a name of the action, and I usually just hit connect. And within this action, it is the basic, okay, this action will fire when I do just a tap or a click. And you can have it change the text. I'll show you how it will do a perform segue, and you'll be able to go to a new view controller. Questions at the end. Questions at the end, please. Just hold it. So that's the basics for connecting variables to the view controllers. And from there, we will move on. And we'll go through the code that I've written before. So let's get a little more real estate space. To just get rid of this, click back on the lines and you'll be brought back to whichever one was on the left view. So that was my storyboard. And we'll see how everything's all just connected up here. So first thing when you are creating your app is to make the root view controller. And that's this little thing. You can drag it somewhere else and it will act as the root view. From the navigation controller, you can do just a control drag, just like a variable connection, over to the next view controller. Let it go, and it automatically just wants to do root view controller. So you just set that, makes its connection, and there you go. So like with others, I have these two buttons here, and you know what, we'll just go ahead and run this. To run a project, just hit the play button. Hopefully it will say build succeeded. Okay. Why are you huge? 75%. Okay. So here we have the two buttons, nested table view. So this is making a list within a UI view controller while just following the same methods as a table view controller. So if you've ever seen just a list of data in the view, that's usually from a UI table view controller. It's just like this. And I just did the planets just because. And if you do nested, then you get to have a little more options. You can make the list as small as you want, as big as the screen, and you can put more into it, such as I have another button up here. And so this one is the more customizable one, but for now we'll just do the regular table view controller. And from here, I can select items, bring up various information about the items that I've put in, Mercury, Pluto, and oops. So just view the selected, brings up, these are pulled from the controller. I've just customized this string, and these are just the cell items that I've put in. You guys all go to Duncan Hall?
Yeah.
I know, right? For some reason, I couldn't edit it, even though I have admin rights. So that's just how the project will look. Now we're going to go through the code. Okay. I'll let you all get situated before I start talking again. All right. So these just have the two buttons. As you saw on the screen, I have yet to kind of figure this out, but you can change the size of the storyboard just by this with any and any. And you can go to various sizes, such as this will be like, it tells you the dimensions of the screen. There's probably the auto layout framework, which I've yet to play with, which will automatically resize all your elements as long as you set it properly to be whatever you need. If I go to this right now, oh wow, it didn't break everything. That's surprising. So that will bring up just for like the iPhone 5, I guess. But we'll just stick to this in case everything does break. Okay, so as you can see, there's a bunch of these, what's known as .nib files that are just view controllers in the storyboard, all connected by these arrows and such, and nobody has any idea. So, oh, that's up, that's up. Okay, so to go from one view controller to the next, you need something what's called a segue. So I'm just going to delete this. Before I do that, actually, copy that. We'll forget it. So, nope. Nope. Yes. So now, if we try to run this, and I tried to click on the nested table view controller, it broke. Okay. Oh, I know why. It's okay. I know why. As long as I know why. So when we go in, it is just two buttons, the nested table view controller and the table view controller. If you want to go to the next view controller, you zoom out a bit, and you do Control, click, hold, and drag to the next view controller, and just let it go. And as you can see, there's show detail, modally. Modal, you can specify certain animations to occur, such as a flip, crossfade. I have customized my segues before to be completely random, and it was fun, but it didn't work. So that's how to do the animations. I have yet to figure out how to customize the animations, but I always just do a show until I want to make things nice and pretty. So just a normal show, it will connect up, and then you need to click on the arrow, and then you go to the identifier, make sure you have the identifier name. You can name it whatever you want, and hit enter. So it knows that the identifier, okay, can you close the door, please? Okay, so now we have a segue again, and for now, if we go and see the code, this is the code represented for the first main view controller. Okay, all of that. Uh-oh. So for here, forget all the comments. Here we have an IB action, a nested table view. That is the button that I named, the nested table view. It just says perform segue with identifier. You give it the same identifier as you gave the arrow, and you always just send it self. That's what I've done. And to connect that up, let's go to workboard. And as you can see right now, if you do the double click or hold control and click, it will bring up the connections inspector. So we'll say, okay, right now when you touch up inside, which is the basic click, it is connected to this method in the main view controller called nested table. So I'm just going to delete that. Just to show that now it's disconnected, it will not run that method that I hooked it up to. And as you can see, this little gray dot, this one is filled in, this one is not. It is not connected. It is called an IB action, and that means it will perform an action when it is clicked. And I'll just do, since most of you were not here for that first part, you bring up this little bow tie in the corner, and I'm going to give myself a little more space. Bring up that little bow tie, and wrong class. So up here, it will usually have a bigger screen, and I can see a lot more, but I can't. So we go to the represented view controller of this view controller here. So since this is my main, I go to the main view controller, and as we can see, it is gone. So now we have a variable. I always click and make sure that the boxes come up, since I have too many times clicked on the view that was right next to it, and you can pop that in there and it will say UI view, but I don't read properly, so I don't notice it off the bat. So I always make sure the blocks are there. I do control, hold it, click, hold, drag all the way over, insert action or outlet collection, let go. If you do an outlet, you will be able to access the text of the button, the color of the button, size, background image that you can all set within the controller and play with whenever you want. But we want it to be an action. So when we click on it, we want it to do something. So I always just say action, give it a name, nested table view. Just do a simple connect, and there we see the dot has been filled in again. Now we need what I love about Xcode is the autofill. So if I do P, and since I think it knows to do a perform segue with identifier, because that's probably the most common when it comes to buttons. And what was it called? Do a simple string, nested something, remember? There's something.
Try pasting it again.
Oh, you're right. Ha, there you go. Then I always do self, because it wants to send itself, I guess. I don't really know a lot of the technical things when it comes to app development. I just kind of jumped right in and figured it out as I went. I like to think I'm okay, but who knows? Could be someone laughing at me at home right now. So if you don't like that approach, you can delete this again. Now it's broken. And if you create the IB action and create all this by just typing it in without the control drag, you can click on this, hold it, and drag it over to the button. Because there are times when it will lose its connection. And if your app is breaking for some reason and you kind of just don't know why, best thing to do, try to reconnect everything. Because I've had that happen to me too many times. So that is for connecting things within the view controller on the storyboard to the code that you needed to modify. Now it is not in there. Okay, so this function down here, actually, this prepare for segue code, this is the function that is called before the view actually moves over to the next view controller. So if you want to pass data between view controllers, this is the method that you want to access. Or if you want to do logic, like call a function within another in your next view, you would make a connection to the next view controller, and I'll show you how to do that, and say, okay, I want to call this method. So for now, we will come back to that. Okay, so that is reconnecting up these buttons to display the data. So next we shall go to just a simple basic table view controller. That is the cell. Okay, where's the table view controller? There it is. So has the view did load, it has the did receive memory warning, and it also has these methods that you must implement in order for it to be a UI table view controller. It is number of sections in table view, which is if you open up your settings app, you will see the settings kind of split up into blocks. Those are sections within the page that you can manipulate and modify yourself. They are actually static cells that you cannot change. You can play with that once you dive into table view controllers. So I just say one section since I don't want to mess with more. You must have an array that contains all the data that you want to display. It can be strings, it can be dictionaries. I'll show you what I've done. You just return its count. And then you have the cell for row index path. And this little NS index path is the one that determines, okay, it's this cell, this cell, this cell, this cell. So you just do and this code is actually given to you the moment you create the function. If you do a table view controller, it will create this for you. If you don't, you'll have to pull it from somewhere else. So it's the cell, DQ reusable cell with identifier. So it determines, well, I'll show you the cell, and it has the same identifier as planets for index path as the UI table view cell. Then I just say, hey, cell.text label.text is this workshop array, index pet.row, and that is within my data model, is the workshop array. It is an array of strings. This is how you declare an array within Swift. And then you just fill it up with strings. And this is like the source path for the images. This is how to declare a string. So if you just want to declare a simple array, a simple variable, just do var simple. You can set it to whatever you need to. This will, it's not strongly typed, so this will hopefully be assigned whatever you assign it. When you do this, this is declaring, okay, it is of type integer or int or whatever you want, dictionary. And then you have to set, okay, equals to this. I think you can just leave it. Can you just, nope, you gotta set it or initialize it probably. So that's how to create a variable. This is how to create an array of strings. This is how to create a string. This is how to create an empty array. So if we go back to table view controller, we will see that when I do, this resolution's killing me. When I say workshop array, get the index path.row, the index path is the one that is displaying, going through each cell and saying, okay, I'm at this cell, I'm at this cell, and it's going by row. So it's essentially your iterator. And you just say, at this row, I want to assign it this string of text. Now, this little guy, I believe, from my understanding, when you have the question mark, it is allowing it to be null or nil because it's Apple. And if you do that, it will allow this assignment of nil. There's also exclamation point, which means I'm forcing you to do this. Do what I say and unwrap. Even if it's nil, it will crash on you if it's nil though. And it will, I believe, put a breakpoint right where it crashed. It's pretty nice. And it will say, hey, I crashed right here. Whereas before, not so much. That was difficult to find. So that's a basic of assigning the text within the cell. The did select row at index path is not a required method, but if you want the app to do anything when you just click a button, this method will be called. And I say I want the selected item to be the workshop array at this index path.row. So whichever one I selected, it just knows from the index path. And selected item source. These are just things that I put in myself, and I just say once it's selected, I want you to perform the segue with identifier. And as you can see, I do an override of the prepare for segue. And here's how to create a connection to the next table or to the next view controller. You just say var at, as you can see, I do not specify the type. I just say equal to. I go to the segue that is provided. I say destination view controller, and I set it as the view controller that I want to go to. And in this display item view controller, I say ds pass selected item. And as you can see, the variable here, pass selected item is right there. So it will set it with the selected item. This was the way in Objective-C to do it. I've also found that you can create another Swift file, and that's just simple file, new, file, Swift file. And this is where you'd want to kind of put your global variables in a sense, that you don't need to do imports, you don't need to specify connections. It just says, hey, I know it's there. So create. And it just throws it in there, doesn't have anything, but I will, what are you doing? So that's how to create just a Swift file. So now if we go to my Swift file I created earlier, it has the workshop array, the source of the images, the selected file or selected item, which is also where we see the selected item, and it just gets set. And within the display view, I can just do selected item is equal to this label that I connected earlier. It's text. And then you can also, where I set the image source, so selected item src for source, I pull it from the array of the same source array in the data model, and I set it simply like that. This is how to set a UI image with a certain just name. I did not need to actually set the path. As you can see, these are just names of files. They could be misspelled. These are just the names of the images that are, stop it, in this group that I created. You can just do file, new, group from selection if you want to group all your files and stick them into a simple, just these are all my UI view controllers or table view controllers. So within here, I just have all the pictures and the names of them, so you don't even need to specify the path. You can just say, hey, it's named this, go find it. It's very nice. So this is just to display it, view selected items to perform segue with identifier. And as we can see, if we run it again, here, the index path.row goes through and displays everything. We select it, did its prepare for segue. Brings up picture of Earth where we set it. It brings up this label, which is also set with the text of when I select it. So it's only creating one variable and just resetting it each and every single time. And then I can go to view selected. It'll bring up all the ones that I selected, just the names, just because. I did controller Earth, controller Mars, because this is like, okay, I selected these from the controller that I created. So now we'll get to the real guts, and we'll go to the nested table view controller, which is where I also have a customizable cell, which is you can customize the text, you can customize, I put an image view in here, so it has a preview of the images. It scrolls, and we can select, it'll bring up the same menu. And then I put this button here just to show that you can have, this is a UI view controller with a table view in it. Not a table view controller, just a table view. So go to view selected, there's the nested Mercury, nested Mars. So with that, we shall jump into that. So first, we have, go to here. So as you can see the layout, we first would select which option we wanted. It would go to either the nested table view or the nested table or the table view controller, and go back to only one item over here. Can you guys see this okay? Okay. Here is where I have all the items just being displayed, just because. So what was I doing? Okay. So now we'll go to the nested table view controller, or nested table view. It is a simple UI view controller, and I say, okay, I want to implement a UI table view delegate. Was before you have to implement the data source, but I don't remember the actual methods that go into it. I've tried it before, and it keeps spitting an error at me, since I'm not using a data source method as I should be, but I've had no use for it, so it's not in this tutorial. Here, you have to implement the number of rows in section, which is the workshop array.count, and you also have to implement the self row index path again. And you can also do a did select row index path. Essentially, they're almost the same thing, so I could move it to another Swift file that also implements all of these and use inheritance, which is a smart idea, but not for this tutorial. So here, I have also created, stop it. As you can see, whereas before in our table view controller, we had for self row index path, we just have UI table view cell. For nested, I said, okay, instead of a UI table view cell, I want to use my cell. And that is as simple as going to File, New, File, or yeah, Cocoa Touch class, go to Next. Instead of UI view controller, to UI table view, instead of controller, cell. And it just brings it up. You can call it whatever you want. I usually try and follow the same name. So if I'm doing a view controller, I'll call it a name and I'll add on view controller. As you can see, I also do these prefix of JMS. That's my little company, JM Studios. I do the JMS because when you have multiple people working on one project, if they prefix their class names and what they did, even including in CSS, you can find out who did it. It's much easier to track them down and talk to them if need be. So here we're just going to go to the JMS workshop cell. And as before, these are just the two methods that come with it, but I don't touch them. Just does if it's selected, it does what it needs to. These are the UI label and UI image view. So hopefully we will connect those up. Right. Yeah. Where am I? Huh. Okay, so right now, if you click here, so I'm going to try and do this without breaking the project, and hopefully it'll work. Or I'll just show what needs to be done. When you click on the controller here, the view controller, outside of the table view, you'll get the UI view. When you click on the table view, I'll get the UI table view. When you click on the cell, you need to set it before or the JMS workshop cell. And there should be a label here and a UI image view here. I don't know why it's not loading, but I can't see them. So for just as with this table view controller, we see the identifier is set as planets, and when we did the self row index path, this will look for this identifier and say, okay, I go to this cell. And you have to set it for in here too. It has the same identifier. It is just of a different class. So before I go any further, I will hopefully break everything. So to nest a table view, we scroll down in this little bar down here, and we see table view and table view cell. So we say table view, drag and drop, and as you can see, you can adjust the size to be whatever you want. And then in order to make this work, this took me forever to remember, you must control, drag, go up to nested view control, the yellow part, and say data source and delegate. Gave me a headache for months because I would always be like, oh, why is my thing not loading? And that was why. So you must also drag in a cell, and it will pop it in there. Give it the same identifier, planets. Hit enter, always hit enter. And then set the class, JMS workshop cell. And here we need to go back and set the labels, just click and drag, set that one there. Then we need the image view. Where did you go? Where did you go? The UI image view is always close to the bottom. Maybe not anymore. There it is. Image view. I'll make it very elongated and there. So now we have a label and a UI image view within our JMS workshop cell. So if we click on the little bow tie, we'll bring up the assistant editor, and it will not bring up the controller I need. So you click, usually when you click on the class that you're working with, it will bring it up automatically right here. But sometimes you gotta go in and find it. Oh, wow, screw it. Workshop cell. So here, if we do the control drag again, we can just reconnect them up, but I'm lazy. They're already made. So we just click and drag that one, connects it right up. Just click and drag, connect that one up. And this is within our workshop cell. So, moment of truth, people. Run it. Yes, first try. That never works. So that is how to create custom cells, custom table views, and being able to hook them up with the most common errors that I've run into. And I can't believe that worked the first time. So let's see. That is about all that I have. When I have a little bit of time so I can discuss, of course, questions, but also what are new to Swift is closures and extensions. So closure you can put into like your Swift file, and that's where you can make a function that you can use throughout your program, such as a sort function. And they're really cool. And they have sweet, sugary syntax, and they work quite fast. I was surprised when I made my own and then made a closure for like a sorting algorithm. It was, well, to me, a little bit faster, but just I timed it and it was a few milliseconds faster. But it's still much better. And then also extensions, like for a dictionary. I customized my own dictionary. Of course, I used the same functionality as a dictionary. I just added the functionality of, instead of finding if a key was true, or if a key existed, there was no method for that, so I made my own, and it was an extension on a dictionary. So it was pretty neat, and it worked quite well. Kevin's blaming me for the workshop. No, for the wrong room. So I do believe that is all. So questions? One guy who had a question left. Is anybody able to download?
So you would start from scratch. Let's say you want to start from scratch. How you do it?
Okay. So if you want to start a whole new project, you go to File, New. You can do Playground, which as you've found out, you can just play with code, or just New Project. Go to New Project. The Master Detail application, that is the one that will have a lot built in for you. I've never used it since I like starting from scratch. This is a tab-based application for when you tab like a Twitter. When you want to view your account or just like the feeds, you can just tab through. I always do single view application. I believe Kevin has done game once and it brought up a spaceship that you can flick around and it had a core motion applied. So it had the acceleration and all connected up. So you just go to single view application, give it a name. I always have all that. Use Swift language. You can also do Objective-C if you're that crazy. Go to next. I always create a Git repository. So next week we are having a Git workshop to really learn the functionality of Git. Xcode is pretty nice and has their own, it works exactly with Git. It's just the source control up here. You can do commit, push, pull, all the same things that you can do from a terminal. So that's how to create a new project. Any other questions?
You mentioned coding extensions, but could you make an analogy for another programming language of what closures is like?
I believe C# is a good example. You can stick on extensions to certain classes that can customize another class, such as with like the dictionary. I made my own method for a dictionary to test to see if it contained the key that I was looking for. Closures, it's kind of like a global function that you can access, I guess. So if I just wanted to write one sort once, I could write it in my Swift file here. Let's just make a function since I forgot to do that. Do func, give it a name. And then if you want to pass in parameters, I believe it's param1 of type string. So this function will take in one parameter of type string to do specific return types. You give it the arrow. If you want to return something, you say, okay, I want you to return a string. Or if you want a void return, just empty parentheses. And that's a simple, this will be a closure if I wanted it to be. Can do sorting. Closures have sugary syntax where, like with the normal sort, if you like do it on an array, you would pass in the whole array, you do a for loop, and you'd say, okay, if you're less than this one, or we've all done sorts. But for another project that I have worked with, you do like a Boolean return, and it does like the swapping logic for you. It's really cool. It was fun to play around with. I would bring it up, but I can't. It's not. It's part of another business project, so can't. Other questions? No other questions? Any feedback would be nice. We can post that somewhere else, I guess. All right. This will be available up on our CS Club YouTube page, I believe, so you can watch it anytime. There is a GitHub project for everything that I showed you today. Here is my GitHub username and the Swift workshop. You can just clone it, and it will have everything built in for you, and hopefully working. Last I tested, it was working. So that is the beginnings of Swift development. Thank you very much.